question.
Yeah, please.
Do you remember, I'm going to ask you for two memories. Do you remember where you were standing when you first heard about this idea for the show? And do you remember where you were standing when you first called me about the show?
I was in the exact same place for both. I was in my office at our old house, and I was literally about to go pitch a different show to ABC. But the second I heard the idea for this, I was like, how many fresh ways are there into a cop show? Zero. Right. Have I heard this idea before? No. Oh my God, I'm in. And yeah, so that's when I called you from my office, and I'm like, don't pass.
Having a show pitched and sold and not having a script yet, that was a first for me.
Yeah, and you were in the room. I mean, it was great.
That the more time I spend in this business, the more I realize there's really no playbook.
Right.
There is a current, a flow of the way things go, but there's no one way of, if you want this done, this is how you go about doing it.
Right.
It happens in so many different ways, and having a show pitched and sold and not having a script yet, that was a first for me.
I mean, what's interesting is, as a writer in this town, like, nobody tells you how to do anything.
Right. There's no course you can take.
No. So
you no YouTube video.
You just kind of go, okay, well, my job at its heart, and having kids for me was the best, because I'm not an extrovert at all. That was not me. And I basically, when I had kids, I'm like, oh, you're just pitching a story. You're telling a bedtime story. So you got to keep it moving. You got to keep it active.
Keep it exciting. Keep them interested.
Yeah. They pitched me the idea, okay, oldest rookie in the LAPD. I'm like, I'm in. But Bill's story was not dynamic to start. He's just got sick of doing what he was doing in Pennsylvania and was like, I want to be a cop. And LA was one of the few places that would take him. And so he signed up here. So I'm like, well, that's not dynamic. So, but the second I'm like, bank robbery, the second I had that cathartic moment for you, oh, he's going to the bank and it gets robbed. And he has this moment of, having to be brave and having to save, this woman's life. And once I got that, like the pitch, I knew what the show was. What was it like for you to sort of go into that room? And
I'd pitched a show before, never in quite such a warm room.
Right.
But I remember ABC, and I remember you, and I remember thinking, man, this guy's got this thing worked out. He's got it all worked out as far as the moving parts that keep this story propelled, keep everything going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because, every year networks buy, and maybe this will change after quarantine, I don't know, but, so there's, let's say it's the three main networks, well, plus Fox, so 4 networks. They buy anywhere from 50 to 70 drama scripts. And maybe out of those, they decide to make 12 of each. And then out of those, maybe they put 1 or 2 on the air, maybe 3. So it's like this great whittling down. And yet at the same time, you read all these scripts and you're like, and a lot of them are not shows, right? They're a movie, they're a cool idea, but what are they doing in episode 7? What are they doing in episode 21? Our formula is almost the opposite of a traditional, like Castle. Like the first 3 scenes of every episode, you knew what they were. We accused everybody of murder. Everybody we ever talked to, we accused of murder. You needed like 3 of those in act. You needed 5 act outs. Like it was a programmer, and I don't mean that in a bad way. That's just sort of what it was. The rookie sort of lives in things twisting and turning and being unexpected. And I love that we can basically do what we want. And as long as we're telling character stories, you remember the episode with Alan Tudyk, right? You're guarding this crime scene and there's a mystery about what the guys were doing there and why they killed the guy. And then ultimately you realize that there was money hidden in there somewhere. And that's why the bad guys were coming. You never found that money. We never wrapped that story up because that story wasn't about the plot, right? It was about you and Alan's character. I give ABC props because most networks wouldn't let us get away with that. So it's a joy for me to be able to go, yeah, that's the least important part of the story we're telling.
Yes, and we are not limited to one story, one body drop, one story. Actually, we have teams.
Right, and that was the second most important thing to me, was creating an ensemble around you. Castle was so much work. It was because you were in every scene, basically. And I knew, and we talked about this when I called you, and I promised you that I wouldn't do that to you. But, but the joy of having you when we sold it was ABC had the guy in the poster. And so then I could create these characters that we could go out and cast the best actors for. That sort of setup where you were clearly the lead of the show allowed me to create a show with characters that, I mean, you know, not to knock you, but everybody's excited to go to other stories.
There is no question that one of the strengths of the show is the ensemble cast.
What was the first show? Was it Firefly that was your first time being sort of technically the lead of a show?
Yeah. Technically, metaphorically, really, absolutely, in every way, shape, and form.
When you started that, was there a weight to that to you? Were you too young to really even think about what that was going to be?
Yeah, certainly there was a weight. I don't know if I felt like it was a weight of carrying a show, but it was more like a weight of, don't blow this.
Right.
This is your chance. Did I feel pressure? Yes. Need I have felt that pressure? No, I was in really good hands. And that's actually been my gift of putting myself in a position where I'm in good hands.
You always approach your position on the show with a lot of, you know, humility and a lot of generosity. I mean, you introduce yourself, and I see this every time I'm on set. You know, if there's somebody new in a scene, you introduce yourself, and even background people you'll introduce yourself to. Is that how you've always been? Did somebody treat you like that when they were number one?
I've experienced both. I've been treated like a speed bump where people barely slow down for you, and then it's lunchtime and you're standing there and you don't know where to go.
Right.
It's like I've been on that set where the community feels broken, and I've been on a set where, hey, we're all going to go out for a cigarette. Come join us. Well, I don't smoke, but you do chat. This is when we download, and they wanted me to participate and I felt it. I felt like I was safe there. I felt like I could trust these people, and I felt safe enough to fail, which meant I felt safe enough to try things, which meant I felt safe enough to do my very best. I have a question. You're the number one top dog. What lens do you watch this show with? How does it entertain you?
Oh, it 100% entertains me. I find great joy.
Can you escape in it? Can you escape in characters? I mean, you know everything so deeply. How do you remove yourself from what you know to be entertained?
I mean, there's different stages, right? So usually the director's cut, I can only see that it's not what's in my head, which has nothing against directors. Like, you know, there are great director's cuts. There are not great director's cuts. But, you know, I mean, part of the perk of what I've earned is, you know, working my ass off to become the showrunner of this show is that at the end of the day, for good or for ill, it's my vision. And so, you know, what excites me about a director's cut is if I feel like they've given me a lot of tools to sort of help finish crafting this thing. But honestly, the joy of it is what you all do with the scripts, right? I mean, from the crew on up.
I love listening to you talk about the layers and how just the creativity comes in. It's like, well, this part lacks this, and it's such an art form, and you are an artist. I bear witness to some of those layers, and some of them happen. So many of them happen out of sight, and then I see the finished product. The one I think is my favorite, I guess. Seeing the polished product, I guess, is always my favorite. But being present, knowing the scene, knowing the episode, coming there, rehearsing it, and then seeing what the other actors, what life they've brought to it,
right,
what meaning they bring, and how different things land. I think that is perhaps one of my favorite things, is watching that layer, watching it breathe actual life into the story and the lines. And I'm always, I guess proud is the word. I'm always proud to be a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, it must be great to show up on set knowing that you're going to get pushed.
You can count on them to challenge your listening, to challenge your just your presence, just being there.
Yeah.
I have a question. Would you ever, and let's say you will, be on your own show. Let's say you're going to. Who are you going to play?
I think I would probably want to play somebody slightly quirky, but I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I don't know who
how good a job would you do?
I think I'd cut together okay, if that makes sense, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know how much emotional depth I would bring to a role. Let's put it that way, because I'm a little uptight. But yeah, I could have a little fun, maybe. Who knows?
I would like to. I'm not gonna force you into anything, but I would say this is something. It's an idea we should bounce around and maybe.
Season 5.